welcome back. I'm Lisa Blackburn. This is my YouTube channel about everything I want to talk about science and math. And today we are going to talk about force. So we're going to go ahead and record it. And so this is physical science class. This is our next unit, which is going to be Unit 8, force. Yes, Jaden? What? Marked you absent. Oh, we marked out the wrong Jaden.
We'll fix it in a minute.
She'll fix that in a minute. All right. Y'all got to be real quiet and still. I usually have to record third period, not you, because they're better. But y'all are going to be good today because we're going to do it quickly. All right. So what is a force? So we talked about last time energy. We talked about kinetic energy, potential energy, and work. And last year, they did really bad on that test. And so the notes originally from last year, I reviewed energy, but y'all did pretty good on it. Now, a few of you didn't, and Miss Olivier talked to those of you who are going to get an opportunity for recovery. But for the rest of you, we're just going on. So those of you who maybe didn't do so good on that last test, the video from last time is on YouTube, and you can watch it, and that can help you review. All right, so what is a force? A force, let's see if I can make this a little bit better. We'll try it. I didn't do it. Let's try it again. Come on. All right. A force is a push or a pull. A push or a pull. So that was your warm-up. Did anybody get it? Did anybody get a push or a pull for what is a force? What were some of y'all's ideas of what is a force? What did y'all have? What did y'all write down for your warm-up? It's kind of common sense, but it's hard to say, isn't it? A use of strength, which would result in a push or pull. So that was real good. What did you say? You got to talk louder. Something that causes something else to happen, like a push or a pull could cause something else to happen. So remember when we talked about work, that with work something has to move? With force, it doesn't. You can push on something and it not move, but you can push on something and it could move and cause something to happen. So yeah, so there are 4 fundamental forces in physics. That's fun to say, 4 fundamental forces in physics. Gravity, we learned about that one last time. Electromagnetic, we learned about that last time. And there are 2 others called the strong force and the weak force. Those have more to do with nuclear chemistry, and we're not really going to talk about those 2. But we learned about gravity and electromagnetic. Now, this is what our essential question was, is forces must be balanced. So that word that I left off of the essential question for our new standard is that forces are balanced where everything is still. So if everything is still, the forces are balanced. So right now, my water bottle is sitting right there, and it is not flying around the room. So that means that all the forces on it are balanced. Gravity's pulling down on it, but the table's holding it up. If it suddenly started flying around the room, it'd be crazy, or maybe an earthquake, and the forces would be unbalanced. So forces are unbalanced when something moves. Forces are unbalanced. So net force is if all the forces on something add up. So you figure out what they all are, you add them up, and you see what the net force is. Now, what kind of force can slow something down? Gravity speeds things up. You fall and you get faster and faster. But what if I rolled a ball down the hall? Would it go on forever? No, what would stop it? Friction. Yay, you already know this. So what force slows things down? Friction. Friction. So forces like to be balanced. There's our friction, our little piece of sandpaper. Now, what could cause friction? What causes friction? Got friction going right here. Pushing things together, right? Does something have more or less friction if the surface is very smooth? It's going to have less friction, right? So what can reduce friction? A smooth surface. A smooth surface. Also, is it going to have more friction to slide a box across the floor or to put it on wheels and roll it? Which one's going to have less friction? The wheels. So you can do rolling instead of sliding. Rolling instead of sliding. And then there's another thing you can do. So you go to the automotive store and you buy this and you make sure you pour it in a little port in your engine to make sure your engine doesn't have too much friction. What do you buy to put in your car? You have to have it changed every so often. Oil. So you can have some sort of grease or oil, something like that, and that also reduces friction, doesn't it? So like if you have a squeaky hinge, you can put WD-40 on it. Y'all know what that is? Comes in a can, spray it on things. So let's talk about friction just a second more before we move on. Okay, so why there is friction is if you can see microscopically on the surfaces, there would be all these bumps and ridges. And so as one surface is sliding over the other one, they catch, and that causes friction. Do you see if you roll, then there's less friction. Then the mountains on one side fits into the valleys of the other, and it's less friction. Now, the nature of the surface is what gives it how much friction you're going to have. Wax paper would slide over each other easier than sandpaper would. So for those of you who are going to go ahead and take physics one day instead of just physical science, then you're going to learn more about this. There's a thing called mu, and it's the coefficient of friction, and there's different kinds of friction, and so there's a little bit more math to it, but this is a good introduction for us. Okay, so we're going to be doing more math. Did y'all like that math last time? Having your formulas, doing that on the test, that was pretty easy. We're going to be doing some more math like that. And this time our formula is F equals ma. So this is considered the central equation of physics. So one time I was at college and there was a physics club, they were like the Physics Honor Society, and they all had t-shirts that just had this formula real big on it, F equals ma, because it's the central equation of physics. Okay, it wasn't a very creative t-shirt, but it was eye-catching, yes.
I think I know what the 3 letters stand for.
Okay, what's the F for?
Force.
Force, okay, everybody? Well, you got that one right.
M, I think, is going to be mass.
Yes! M is, you said mass?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep, that's the mass.
And then A would be acceleration.
Yes, it's acceleration. Good job. So, the equation is force equals mass times acceleration. So that kind of makes sense. If I'm going to hit something, if I do it, the force is going to be equal to the mass, like how heavy my fist is, times the acceleration, how fast I move it. If I've got a big, heavy fist, but I'm not moving very fast, it's not going to make much force. But you hear about people who, they'll hold quarters or something when they hit somebody. They're adding mass to their fist, and it makes them hit harder. So, that's considered, playing dirty, fighting dirty. That's not fair fighting. Okay. But, okay, can I go on up? Okay, our next formula is speed. S is for speed. So we're going to be doing some things where we go outside and do labs with that. Or velocity. V is speed with direction. Speed or velocity.
Distance divided by time.
Yes, is distance divided by time. So I have a little story about this formula. Okay, so speed is distance over time, and that makes sense to y'all because y'all know about cars and you know about speed limits. And so if it says 45 is the speed limit, you know that that's miles per hour. Miles is a distance, hours is a time. So 45 miles per hour, you know what this means, right? Okay, so I had a physical science class the very first year I started teaching. I came in the middle of the year. And I had this one physical science class that they had very, very low level of skills. They were very, very low level. And they were rough. Like these kids were constantly in ISS. They were constantly in OSS. They were constantly going to court for juvenile. You're in and out of juvie. I mean, they have problems with the law. And so one day I was trying to get them to remember this formula and they just couldn't remember speed equals distance over time. And I was like, we need some sort of acronym with the letter S, D, and T, sort of like Roy G. Biv to help y'all remember this. And I had this one kid in the front row and he looked like he was 30. It's like, how many times have you failed ninth grade? And he looked at me and he said, dead science teacher. I was like, oh. I'm a brand new teacher, and this kid's like, oh, he wants to kill me. But we plugged ahead, and then one day the whole class showed up wearing a red T-shirt, and I was like, what? I had missed the memo that we're all wearing red T-shirts today. They said, oh, Miss Blackburn, you didn't know. We're in this special program. They were the most at-risk kids in the school for being in jail, drugs, gangs, dropping out. And they had put them in a special group to try to give them special help and an intervention. And I'm like, it would have been good if someone had clued me in that this was, like every single one of those kids had a record. They had all been to juvie. They were actually a criminal class. And so I'll never forget, dead science teacher from the criminal class. But so I sort of watched those kids after that because I was like, did the intervention work? No. Of that whole class, one graduated. One made it to graduation. A boy named Woody. Everybody else failed.
So the intervention didn't work.
The intervention didn't work. It was not good. But anyway, so now y'all can remember dead science teacher. Okay. So we're going to be doing math and graphing. So be sure to bring your calculator every day for this. Yes, Gunnar?
I know the first and third law, but I don't know.
Well, let's talk about it, okay? I bet y'all know these. So Newton, that was our closing is who's Newton. And we know that from the video yesterday. Do y'all remember Sir Humphrey Davies? He wrote in his journal, Davies and Newton, because Newton was the father of physics, and he was like, I'm going to do it for chemistry, and in a lot of ways he did. So if y'all remember when y'all did your element reports, so many of you said, my element was discovered by Sir Humphrey Davies. I bet a bunch of y'all remember that right now. So Newton was a scientist who really started understanding how the forces of nature worked. And he came up with the 3 laws of motion. The first law of motion is an object at rest stays at rest. And an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. Okay? And that is inertia. That things like to continue doing what they're doing. And remember in our Eureka video, they said it was being lazy. That things in nature like to be lazy. If they're at rest, they want to stay at rest. If they're in motion, they want to keep moving. But so it's the principle of laziness or inertia. Okay, the second law of motion is a formula, the most important formula in physics. F equals ma. Force equals mass times acceleration. So, if you want to know the force, multiply the mass and the acceleration. The third law of motion, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah, y'all already know so much of this. I'm so glad. It's going to be easy. Okay, and we know about gravity. It's a force of attraction between things that, let's talk about third law again. Okay, so I always think a good illustration of this one is if you've ever been swimming and you were at a pool and you had a raft. And eventually you got the idea to climb up on top of the raft and jump off, right? When you did the raft stay still or shoot out behind you? It shoots out behind you. For every action, you diving forward, there's an equal and opposite reaction, the raft shooting out behind you. Does that make sense to you? Okay. All right, so gravity is a force of attraction between things that is greater the closer and bigger they are. Bigger meaning more massive. We're going to put right here more mass. Okay, so gravity is everything that has mass has gravity. You have gravity on your desk right now. Your desk has gravity on you, but y'all are too small for it to be felt. For it to be felt, you have to be something big like a planet, like the moon and the earth. And there you see it, and it is a force of attraction that where things draw things to themselves. So the earth is big enough that you can feel the gravity, and it is drawing stuff to itself. So if you run along and you fall, you're going to be drawn to the earth and scrape your knee. But the earth, you're not big enough to pull the earth toward you. The earth pulls you toward the earth. Okay, so what's the difference in weight and mass? Weight is the pull of gravity on you. So you could go to space and be weightless because you wouldn't be where you were being pulled on. It's measured in pounds or newtons, and the formula for weight is mass times gravity. The mass times the gravity. So there's another formula we're going to use right there. And I'll give you the formulas, you just have to fill them in, just like last time. Mass is the amount of matter that makes you up. The amount of matter, the atoms that make you up is the matter. Okay, how do we feel about that? Good so far? So the next idea is momentum. So momentum is, you sort of know about already. You're running really, really fast, and suddenly a little 2-year-old toddles out in front of you. What's going to happen to that poor little 2-year-old? They're going to get creamed because you're not going to be able to stop in time. You're going to just run right over them. So they needed to have stayed with their mom and not be walking in front of you running super fast where you can't get stopped, right? Okay, now, which one has more momentum running along? Me or a giant football player? Which one it would be better to be ran into by me or a giant football player going the same speed? I would be better. I have less momentum. So I run. I've told y'all that before. And usually I go run on the Silver Comet Trail because it's just nice and straight and shady and all that. But every now and then I'll run at the courthouse. And people will be walking along and not realize that they shouldn't just wander from one lane to another because someone might be running by. And so the last time I ran there were people walking along. I thought it was going to be fun. I start to run by them. And, of course, I ran right into somebody because she just came over. And so there's screams and people jump out of the way. And my kids were like, Mom, we knew when we heard screams it was you being awkward running into people. So at least they were run into by me and not a great big football player. So less momentum. Anyway, very annoying though. So if you go walk on that track, be aware that people do run. Okay, so momentum, the symbol kind of looks like a P. And this is another thing. You will learn what these symbols are in physics, and they change. Will you give that to Miss Olivier, please, and shut the door? We're glad you're here. Anyway, different different physics books will sometimes use different symbols, but the formulas, the words are the same. So momentum equals the mass times the velocity. So which one has more momentum, a train or a motorcycle at the same speed? A train. So should the motorcycle cut in front of the train trying to make it across the tracks? No. What will happen if they misjudge the timing? They will die. They will die. So don't ever try to outrun the train. It's going to win. You're not going to win the momentum race there. Okay, so the next idea is free fall. What makes things fall? That's pretty easy. Gravity. It's due to gravity. Okay. So acceleration increases as you fall. So you get, as you fall, it's not just one speed, falling speed. As you fall, you get faster and faster. Okay. And the acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. As you fall till you reach, it's called terminal velocity. And what that means is eventually you stop speeding up because of air resistance. You'll finally get to the point where the friction from the air, terminal, will equal to how fast you're falling, and you won't fall any faster. It's called terminal velocity. So there's always, like the myth that if you throw a penny off the Empire State Building, it'll get faster and faster and faster and become a bullet and hit somebody walking below and it'll kill them. And it's not true because of air. The penny is little and light, and eventually it doesn't get faster. So it's not like a bullet that is accelerated out of a gun. It's just falling. And eventually the air is going to slow them down. And so if you drop a penny off the Empire State Building and it hits somebody, they've done a test, it will cut through the skin of their head, but not their brain. It won't penetrate the skull. They'll be fine. As long as they're not like looking up and gets in their eye.
They tested that.
Mm-hmm. Science, we have to test everything. All right, so terminal velocity. So the other thing is you can actually survive jumping out of a plane without a parachute or like your parachute failing. There are people who have done it. How they did it is they don't like dive head first. You'll die that way. They try to spread out, go flat, and you can actually steer as you're falling. So what you want to aim for, if you ever find yourself in this situation, is you want to aim for something that will slow your fall. So there are people who have aimed for like little pine trees and gone through the little branches as they break, and then they fall and they might have a broken leg or something, but they live. There's also been people who have lived falling out of airplanes I heard where they had used commercial plows where they plow really, really deep, and they landed in a freshly plowed field, so the dirt slowed their fall, and they were okay. And then there was a guy I knew. I used to go to church with him, and his sister was skydiving, and her parachute didn't open, and she aimed for a barn roof where she hit near the pinnacle of the barn and then rolled down the barn roof and then landed, and I think she had a broken arm, and she lived jumping out of an airplane. So it can be done. It's all about stopping. It's not the fall that kills you, it's the stopping. And if you can slow the stopping where it's not sudden, then you do better than if you stop suddenly. Because that stopping suddenly that will kill you. So terminal velocity, even people can reach it. Okay, projectile motion. So projectile motion is like if you shoot something out and then it eventually falls. You shoot your Nerf gun, it goes out, but eventually it hits the ground, right? It's a projectile motion. So which one do you think would hit the ground first? If I have a gun and I shoot it, and I shoot a bullet out like that, and I have in my other hand another bullet and I drop it, which one is going to hit the ground first? The bullet that I drop or the bullet that is shot? So everybody for shot, everybody for ground, everybody for they are going to hit exactly the same. It's exactly the same. So it turns out that horizontal motion does not affect vertical motion. So they're going to fall at the same speed, even though one is going out horizontally, that they would hit at the same time. So if you hear a gunshot and enough time has gone by to drop a bullet and you didn't get shot, you're okay. Does that make sense? Because that bullet's already on the ground somewhere. Now, if someone shoots a bullet straight up, that's different. It's going to go up till it stops, and then it's going to fall back down to earth again. So that's just things to think about in physics class. Okay, work. We already talked about work a little bit. To do physics, work in physics, you have to use a force and make something do what? You should know this from last unit. Move, yes, it has to move. And work equals force times distance in joules. We talked about that. So, but the reason why we're reviewing it is now we're going to add to work power. What is power? Power is the rate, how fast, the rate of work. And power equals work over time. The unit is in watts. The unit is in watts. You know how a light bulb, it says how many watts it is? That's a unit of power, how fast work is done. How do we feel about that? Good. Most of this is pretty intuitive, isn't it? Okay, machines. Why do you use a machine? To make it easier or harder? Easier, right? And that easiness is called mechanical advantage. And there's a formula for it. The mechanical advantage is equal to the output of the machine divided by the input times 100. Output over input times 100. So we're going to be doing a unit on some simple machines, this unit, and we're going to spend a little bit of time here. Right now I have the test for not this Friday, but the next Friday. Depending on how much fun we're having with machines, it might be even a little later than that. Especially because Monday and Tuesday we've got the PSAT, and a lot of you are going to be taking it. So there's that too. All right, so 6 simple machines. Did y'all learn these in middle school already? Sometimes students stay this in middle school. The first one is the inclined plane. Inclined planes also include wedges and ramps. So this is an inclined plane, a wedge, a ramp, so something you use to split wood, a handicap ramp, a wedge to hold the door open, a door stopper. They're all inclined planes. They're things that are shaped like a triangle. The power of the triangle. Okay, the next one is, really it's a type of inclined plane, it's the wedge. And it is 2 ramps put together. But they're sort of listed different here, but these are sort of related. And there's another one that's related too. And that's the screw. It's really an inclined plane that's wrapped. It is a wrapped ramp, and I can say that. And we're going to do a little activity with this, probably tomorrow. It's a wrapped ramp. So imagine that I've got a piece of paper that looks like a triangle, and I wrap it around a stick. It will leave a pattern of going around and around like that. That's a screw. So screws make it easier to put something in, okay? So another type of simple machine is a lever. I say lever, some people say lever. One time I was talking to someone saying lever, and he says lever, not lever, and he thought I was saying lever. It was a very confusing conversation. Levers do not have anything to do with simple machines. Okay, so a lever, do y'all know what I'm talking about? A lever, a switch, some sort of switch kind of thing. There are 3 types of levers, and we're going to do a lab investigating those. Okay. The next one is called wheel and axle. You can think of it as a steering wheel. A steering wheel. And then another one is a pulley, which is a type of wheel and axle. So notice these machines, they're types of each other. You know, the wedge and the screw are types of inclined planes. The pulley is a type of wheel and axle is actually a type of lever. So all of these are very related. And we're going to be talking about them and building some simple machines. Look at our fun little kits here that we're going to be using soon. All right, so the 3 classes of levers. I told you there's 3 types. They're first, second, and third class. And it has to do with the fulcrum. Okay, so the fulcrum is the part of the lever that doesn't move. So if I have a switch, the part that doesn't move is down here at my fingers. Does that make sense? That's the fulcrum. If I have a lever like this, a teeter-totter, the part that doesn't move is right here in the middle. That's called the fulcrum. Everybody good with that word, fulcrum? Okay. So the first class of lever, the fulcrum, the still part, is between the input and the output force. So this is like a seesaw. Have y'all ever played on a seesaw? On one of these? They're hard to find now. They used to be when I was a kid, they were in all the parks and you could play on them. But then they decided they were unsafe because you would be playing on it and your brother would be on one side and you're way up here in the air. And what would he do? He'd just get off and you'd go, boom. Okay, and you might fall off and bang your head or you might hurt your bottom. Okay, so the powers that be decided these were unsafe and they took them out of the playgrounds. But we went... Where were we? To Gulf Shores, Alabama. And there was a park there that had giant seesaws where you would go up like 2 stories. It was like this adult playground, and you would go up way high in the air, like way higher than that. It was at least half again as high, if not double high. I think you could die on those things, but they were really fun. They were right at the coast. So you can probably Google it. It was at Gulf Shores, Alabama. It was so fun. And that was just a few years ago. They had not taken it out. They probably taken it out by now. Okay, the next kind is the fulcrum is at one end. The force is on the end. It uses this idea of torque, and we're going to talk about that. So this is a wheelbarrow. Wheelbarrow. Okay, so what is torque? Torque is a rotational force, and it's where the resulting force, the torque, is the force times the length of the lever arm. So this is where if you have a bigger handle, it's got more force, and you can increase force this way. So you intuitively know about this already. Over here, if I took the door handle and I moved it from here to here, right by the hinges, would it be easier or harder to open the door with the door handle very close to the hinges? It would be harder, much harder. You know that, don't you? But out here, where we've increased the lever arm, it's a much easier force. So the whole thing in Lord of the Rings with the Hobbit door with the doorknob in the middle is just dumb. Because physics would work in Middle Earth the same as it does here. That doorknob would not be in the middle. It would be on the edge of the door. I'm sorry. You know, I might can believe in orcs and elves and all that, but when they put the doorknob in the wrong place, they've crossed a line. We can't have that. Okay, so that's the torque force. So have y'all ever heard the expression, that torques my jaw? That means it really bothers you. It's a country expression. But what it means is, if someone is torquing your jaw, they're hitting you and turning your head. Do you see that? It's like a hit in the face. So that's what that means, a little physics expression there. Country, but physics. Third class, fulcrum at one end, the force is in the middle. It just extends your reach, and that's a rake. So if you have a rake, you go like this. The still part is where your hands are. The part that moves is down here. It doesn't give you more force. It just is so you don't have to get on your hands and knees and pick the leaves up. A rake, third class. All right, last bit here. Simple machines can be combined into complex machines, like a bicycle. Okay. Efficiency is that machines lose efficiency through things like friction and heat. Yeah, it's heat. There's our seesaw. Draw an arrow down to that. Seesaw. Okay. The efficiency is the output over the input times 100. So there's another math formula we're going to use. And a car is only about 15 to 20% efficient. You ever felt of a car after driving it? It's warm, isn't it? So it's not very efficient. All right, so there's our standard we're doing. That's the old standard. The new standard is underneath it. I put them both on there because it does cross over into like that work that we've already talked about. So what do you feel about this? Pretty good. We've got about 10 minutes. Start working on the worksheet. All right? And then we'll have a test on this. We're going to do lots of labs. I think it's going to be a fun unit. Okay, like, share, subscribe. Science is great.